And that is a perfect segue for our next topic. We will move into the world of artificial intelligence. That again, I'm a huge fan of Global Performance Insights, and I'm big follower of. I think I've read just about every single one of your blogs by now, partially in preparation for this one, but just out of general interest too. So congratulations to all your work on that, and for being a leader in this area. I don't know. Maybe just tell us about what you're doing in that space to kick things off, Joe.
So, I mean, obviously, it's a massively topical area that across society, as well as our cross section in sports science. It's certainly an emerging technology that's not disappearing anytime soon. And so I think it's important that we try to learn about it and upskill ourselves, and then try to work out if and how we can enhance it. And so over the last year, I've partnered up with Zone 7, who are AI-driven company performing analysis in relation to training load management and injury risk forecasting. And they approached me and said, we know kind of that there's questions, there's maybe people have concerns. So we want you to almost be an investigator for us. And we want you to gather through Global Performance Insights and the community, gather practitioner questions or comments. And then let's try and work through a series where we can dive into that. And obviously for me, that was really exciting because it was an area that I wanted to upskill on and learn about. And so what a fantastic opportunity for me to take everyone else's questions and then try and, learn myself and hopefully produce information back to the community that is both educational, but also applicable. We've mentioned kind of the blog a few times. It's something I've done almost for nearly 10 years now, actually, and actually stemmed from, it was created by myself and a couple of others initially back in the day as a memory to Nick Broad, who I think you were familiar with, and obviously through Gareth as well. So Nick was my boss at Chelsea, the one who did give me my first break with the internship. And unfortunately, we lost him in a car accident a number of years ago, 2013, so 10 years ago now. And so after that, a year or so after that, Johnny Bloomfield, David Penny approached, we got together and said, let's just start writing to see if we can keep his legacy alive of discussion and disseminating information and exploring research. And it's kind of incredible. I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but actually that blog, a bit of writing in my spare time and trying to develop my own writing skills and my own clarity of thought and research has kind of just snowballed over the years. And again, back to the original question really of Zone 7 identifying that blog, which is now Global Performance Insights, being a platform that they could potentially partner with to address some of the questions. So I threw it out there to anyone who might listen and said, what are your questions? And had some conversations and compiled. And from that, we identified 6 themes, kind of around definition. So what even is AI? Inputs, thinking about big data, quantity, quality. Context we've already mentioned here a few times, so how do we incorporate that? Transparency, and obviously when people think of AI, naturally a lot of people think of black boxes, and that's a hot topic, so there was questions around that. And then outputs, in terms of data visualization and the translation of models into meaningful numbers. And and then the application and the integration into applied practice. So that was kind of the whole journey, if you like, across the data pipeline. And for each theme, we created an article. Some ways with definition, it was an AI dictionary, which is been really popular because it's just an online resource that you can go back to and refer back to. So some of the others being more myself exploring that theme and how AI might be integrated into it. Some of them, Zone 7, address more themselves, like the transparency piece was a Q&A with them asking about that. And then we brought it all together into a report that's free and available to download, and added a checklist that do's and don'ts that kind of summarize the whole series. And hopefully some people have read it, and hopefully hopefully, as I said, it's all available free, and I'm appreciative of Zone 7 and their ability to want to, engage with sports science industry and put all this work into like trying to answer the questions and drive forward the discussion in this area.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I downloaded it last night. I read it last night. It's excellent. And I will include the link in the show notes for this. So yeah, highly recommend it. If you're in this area and you're listening in, this is the Bible of the area right now for us, at least a Coles Notes version of it. So it's, well done to you and the team at Zone 7 for that. It's excellent. Maybe just start off with defining artificial intelligence for us. What are we talking about here? Really simply, Joe.
I think artificial intelligence is a broad term that any time is describing a computer that is trying to be trained almost to think like a human. Mm-hmm. Within that, that's when you start to break it down into the specifics of, well, machine learning does it in this way. And then within that, deep learning does it in that way. But it's I still hold my hands up and say, look, I'm not a data scientist. I'm still very much an applied sports scientist. But I think it is our responsibility to try to understand all this area, because it's already in our realm, and it's going to become more and more in many different ways, not just on the injury risk and training load perspective. So that's my understanding of it as a broad term.
Yeah, that's nice, and I'm exactly the same way. Like I'm a coach and a sports scientist, and I'm not a data scientist, but I'm using this stuff with Athletica. So need to understand it a little bit, in a simple way. So what's around input? What are the considerations there that are important for us in this area?
Yeah, so input was around data quality and quantity. And I think data quantity, we ride a wave, as I described it, because there's some ways we have tons of data, and there's other ways that we have much less data. We have a lot, generally speaking now, often in many professional team sport competition settings. We get a lot of tracking data from games, for instance. Whenever you do a force plate test, with that one test, you get a ton of data. But there are tons of gaps as well, both in terms of when the athletes are away from the facility. There are also gaps in what we're actually capturing. Our understanding of the psycho-emotional stressors is much more limited than our ability to actually capture meters covered, for instance. So there's that aspect, but then there's also quality. So how good is the data that we're collecting? And I think this is true regardless of whether it's AI or whatever type of analysis you're doing, that as a sports scientist, we are data stewards. We have a responsibility to try and collect that data in a clean and tidy manner. Otherwise, it's not usable, again, regardless of whatever analysis is being done. So making sure we're also understanding the quality of the data and the processes we use to collect it and how that influences it. So are you doing a standardized warm-up prior to a jump test? Are you logging you might want to do it on the same day within the periodization cycle. You might not be able to, but in that case, are you logging what day it was? And that's probably now starting to blend into the context piece, right? Of, are you tracking everything else around it, the competition schedule, the players, the position, their injury history, the periodization, the travel demands, all these contextual factors that massively influence training load and recovery. It's important to capture that.
Yeah, but you're also, and I mean, if your head as a listener isn't spinning, kudos to you, because mine is, right? When you're listing off all the contextual factors, all the considerations, as a coach or even a sports scientist, with the tools that we're using, it's really hard to get insight into all of that. And this is kind of where machines could potentially, and are, I believe, potentially helping us, because they are able to, if they're set up right by us humans, we can put filters and whatnot in place, and then the deep learning and whatnot with if you're training a model, it can do wonders and discover things that you might not have even sort of seen, right? So
that's the thing, is all of this is hopefully going to allow us to harness the power of the machine to better interrogate the data we're collecting. But that doesn't let us off from the responsibility of capturing the data with good quality in a consistent manner, and also capturing the context of what's going on. And that, for me, is why the machine will never fully replace the human. Certainly in our world, there are too many other things that you see as a practitioner day to day, what's going on in terms of the context, in terms of knowing the athlete and knowing what it means to them in relation to their injury history, in relation to their physical capacities and their ability to cope with training loads, their family setup, their backgrounds in terms of life stresses. I just see it as potential for a more advanced processing tool that I can then couple with the gut and my eyes and what I'm seeing, what I know in the environment.
Yeah, it's a tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a more advanced tool in your toolbox, potentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where do I segue? I mean, the other thought I was having, I was going back towards my field, right? And one of in the endurance world, one of the things, sometimes we use the wrist-based heart rate sensors, for example, if someone's not wearing a chest strap, and they're notoriously bad for giving a good input signal on the heart rate for the internal load. So that, again, just a really simple example of how that needs to be recognized. The context of that data input needs to be recognized, filtered if possible. These types of things, right? There's a lot of things. A GPS trace can be off. A power meter cannot be calibrated, for example, or goes out of whack, and the cadence goes wacky, and you all of a sudden get different power numbers that are off the chart. And like you said, it's important for humans to still be aware of the limitations and to be able to catch glitches that maybe the machine isn't there yet they're taking. Although as we advance, maybe a little bit more, maybe machines will catch up there. They're certainly catching up in some areas.
Yeah, we still have those responsibilities, definitely, to filter and check through everything.
Yeah. Well, one area that in my field is just that we're looking at right now is unbelievable, and that's ChatGPT 4. So just like, so you said something. You said that humans just won't be replaced for certain aspects, and yeah, I kind of agree with you, but at the same time, like what we're discovering ChatGPT can do is on, like, from a training plan, you can ask ChatGPT to build you a training plan now, and it will do a better job, mark my words, than most off-the-shelf training plans in terms of just a plan. And it's, that you would pay for on the internet in the endurance world. You can just check it out yourself. Go to download the ChatGPT on OpenAI, and you can go see that the training plans are there, and they're built up, and they're better than most that I've seen on the internet. So there's some crazy stuff that's moving quickly, Joe. And again, I'm reflecting on your excellent YouTube explanation of ChatGPT and demonstration of what it can do. The example you gave was training load, which was excellent. So what else are you seeing there?
Well, it's moving so rapidly, right? So I think that was kind of January time, and now just, I think maybe yesterday it was, or this week, Google is now releasing their version, their competition. ChatGPT was GPT-3, and already since that video, it's gone up to 4. So these tools are evolving rapidly, and it's important, I think, to try to understand the pros and cons, or the ways it can help and the ways it can't help. So the training program one is an interesting one. It's interesting that you speak so highly of what it's putting together. I perhaps wouldn't have expected such a glowing mark for them based on what they're doing, because it's a language model, right? So it's just had tons of language, conversation, text thrown into it. When I did that video, and I think still up till now, it's only up to 2021 perhaps. So sometimes with the research, if you're doing a very up-to-date research topic, it won't have the last few years in it. But it's just pulling to, it's not necessarily searching like Google would, but it's searching within the language that's built into it to pull things together to try and work out what goes together best. So one of the key limitations I found thus far is with references. So it is actually trying to pull together from the language what it thinks would be the citation. It's not actually looking through PubMed or a database and finding the whole citation. And so sometimes it might get lucky and get it right. Sometimes it makes it up completely. Well, it's always making it up, but sometimes it will give you a reference or a citation that does not exist because it's trying to pull together the language. So that's been like a key lesson for me. And so already now, some ways I've pulled back a little bit from my experiences of using it. So now when I'm writing, I'm still going, I'm PubMed, I'm Google Scholar, I'm all those tools still, because I've established its pros and cons. But other ways it definitely can help, and it's going to keep evolving. So let's try and stay on top of how is it going to enhance what I do and how is it limited.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was totally agree with what you're saying there, but it's the evolution of the ChatGPT is incredible to us. So we did an experiment where we asked it to build a training plan, and then 24 hours later, we asked it to do the same training plan to build it, and it changed, and it was better 24 hours later. So
I wonder though,
crazy.
was it was it better, or is that just the chance? Like if you did it for 10 days in a row, I'd be very interested in the variation, because if it's just each time trying to pull from its language database, you've got like an N of 2 there where it has got better, but was that luck?
True. Well, we could test that though, couldn't we? We could build we could build our own model.
And this is the thing now, is there will be research done on it, and we've seen the N of 1 where it can pass some legal test,
Yeah, it just passed the bar. It just passed the bar.
But can it do it consistently? I've seen again, teachers talking about they feed in the marking system, and they feed in like an assignment, and the mark it gave the assignment was aligned with what that teacher would have given. But again, that's N equals 1. So actually, if you did it on 10,000, what would be the success rate? It's so interesting.
Well, exactly. We don't know the answers, but holy cow, it's blowing minds right now, right? So, in there, I think, we, again, at Athletica, we're obviously pretty intrigued by it. And, we're obviously, you're wondering about it, and Zone 7 would be the same from a threat standpoint, or a competition standpoint. But what we have to realize, at least at this point in the game, is we're talking about a language model. So it's language. It's only information. It's not, at least at this point, it's not grabbing GPS data and load markers and these types of things yet. But so I mean, it's we're putting a blog post together, AI versus AI, kind of thing, and it's, at this point in the game, it can't. It doesn't have the context around the day-to-day sort of changes and these sorts of things.
But it's again, that comes back to working out how to harness it, right? How can it help you? How can it save time? What are its strengths that perhaps align with human weaknesses that can help with? But similarly, what are its weaknesses that you're still going to need the human to do? And like as I said, I've probably regressed back a little bit in the last few weeks or so, writing a book chapter right now. And my process now is still, PubMed, Google Scholar, whereas people's initial thoughts are that I'm just going to ask it to write a book chapter and it does it. But of course it maybe doesn't do it with the right, most up-to-date information, citations, stuff like that. So again, it's finding the right combination.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I like your skepticism, and but it's certainly one that's evolving rapidly. It's this podcast will probably be released in 2 weeks, so who knows what's I hope it's still recent enough, Joe.
I'm sure it will be.
I think, I guess I wanted to touch on your thoughts. If you were speaking to someone that shares your skepticism, I want to read out a resistance quote that I came across from a colleague in the area, and I was trying to explain to him about this evolving area, and he says that as a coach, I'm currently extremely skeptical about the all of this AI use and the way that I, as a coach, would use it. So to me, the details are hugely important, and I simply don't want to trust an AI program to do any of the work that I can effectively do myself. I'm very open to being proven wrong, but for that to have to happen, I'm not going to gamble on one of my athletes. He is going to be open if he starts hearing colleagues that are, finding success with this. So what are your thoughts there in terms of when we look at early adopters versus mid and late adopters? Are you seeing similar with the work that you're doing, or any resistance from coaches or sports scientists that you talk to?
Yeah, I think that's a common thought process, because hopefully they don't mind me saying, but my reflection on what you've just read out is the individual is seeing it as all or nothing. They're seeing it as it's either the AI writes the program for my athlete or I do, rather than it being one of the tools on your tool belt that helps you. And I'm sure that is the natural flow for many people with any technology. Internet, Google, like all the big pieces. We could go on and on about how skeptics responded, which now to us would sound silly. I'm sure that has become such an important ingrained part of our lives. We've described it a couple of times as just, it is a tool. So for me, I would certainly not say, write this program, or, just rely purely on the machine to do it. In terms of like a system like Zone 7 would have, I would certainly continue my processes, how I analyze the data pre-AI myself, and run it initially alongside. So what does my process think? And then, okay, let me cross-reference that with the machine, and then delve into perhaps where there's differences. So that's always how I think I would have integrated it myself. And again, it might be that it's finding those specific use cases where it is valuable. And it might just be that you take a portion of what it's recommended. So it is just the same as, like, I don't know, using Google perhaps, or any one of those many tools that all comes together for us to come to our decision. Because if I link back all the way to the beginning where I described, like, I try and help these key stakeholders with their decision making. Well, when the coach is deciding, should tomorrow be a day off, for example, something like that, it's not just me that's the input. They've got my input, which I try to do based on science, based on data, based on research. But they've probably also got their own bias. They've probably got maybe the head strength coach or a fitness individual. They've certainly got an assistant coach. Maybe they've got some players. And so they're listening to all those voices and all those data streams and coming to a decision. And for me, the AI is like just another individual in that mix.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how we are using it for Athletica coach version. It's like, it's an assistant coach. It's just one more thing you can consider. You're still the coach, but it's another tool in the toolbox for you. On the adoption phase, and you're probably old enough as well to know when GPS first came out in the world, whether it would have been endurance sports or it would have been team sports. Not everyone was adopting that right away, right? But look at it now. Same with the power meter in cycling back in the 80s and 90s, slow evolution. And then, Training Peaks came along, and it was the tool that you used to integrate into the to understand, and you had eyes on the road when the athlete wasn't around. You actually got to see what got done, and on it kind of goes. And I really feel that we're in that same sort of phase right now, where there's going to be a lot of skepticism initially here with this tool. Again, that's all it is, but and it will run its course, and I think it's going to run it even quicker because everyone's talking about it and they're seeing the results. Right. It's right in front of their face if you go and tinker with Chat GPT or whatever you're using. So, yeah, a little bit of healthy skepticism is good, no question. But I think also being open to seeing whether there's real value is going to be important too.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I like about the series we did with Zone 7, from kind of like the definition piece, and it cropped up a few times throughout, is like equipping practitioners to know the questions to ask of these companies, because there shouldn't be sort of no skepticism whatsoever either, because artificial intelligence is just a very broad side of part of data science, right? So actually every company, every approach, every model itself is going to be evolving, and practitioners can really upskill themselves in like, okay, let me understand what, for instance, sensitivity and specificity is, and then let me ask and challenge the company what stats they're seeing, what outcomes they're seeing with their models. Maybe ask them to run a prospective report, a retrospective report, which is what Zone 7 will do. So you can start to evaluate what they're doing. Because again, it's not just this black and white, all or nothing. And so I think we've come up with some things that can help in the series, with practitioners knowing what questions to ask. But yeah, we're constantly going to be asking the questions, even I completely agree with you about the similarities with the journey we've been on with GPS technology. And now we've got optical tracking technology, we've got local positioning technology, we've got companies like Hawkeye coming into, various team sports with biomechanical assessments. So the amount of data is only going to keep growing. Mm-hmm. So how do we actually get value out of that data that is being collected on our athletes?
Exactly, and take advantage of it. Again, at the end of the day, we're here because we love sport, and if you're into sport, you love performance, and I guess we want to win, and it's part of the tools in the toolbox